Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Branding and Marketing for Career Success. This is part of the Careers Alumni webinar series. We're having another one in January, but I really appreciate you joining me this afternoon or whatever time zone you are, if you're globally and joining us right before the holidays and focusing on you and your career today. So just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Hafner, and I am a career coach here in the CDO and have been here for about 6 years and really enjoy working with MBAs. I myself have an MBA, undergrad, had gone to Harvard, and then got my MBA at INSEAD. So have been in your shoes at some point. And also this topic is very close and near and dear to my heart because prior to becoming a coach at SOM, I worked in marketing and in branding for a number of years. So this is one of my favorite topics. So I used to be a brand management for CPGs, and I also used to work in branding as a brand consultant. So now I like to think about doing branding for students and MBAs and helping them in crafting their brand value proposition in their careers. So before you get started, we have 45 minutes together today. Just wanted you to think about what do you think people say about you when you're not in the room? Because that is your brand, believe it or not. And to some, like myself, you might be super familiar with branding and the ideas of it come very naturally to you. But to others, you might not even think you have a brand, or you think it might be extraneous or really not to the point. But whether you care or not, you are marketing something about yourself, whether or not you consciously or unconsciously think about it. So today is how we're going to think about branding fundamentals and foundational elements. And we'll walk through all the basics together. But first things first, wanted to make sure that if you have any questions that, like I said, we have 45 minutes together today. I'm going to make sure that you have time to answer your questions. So at any point, there is a button at the very bottom, Q&A. Feel free to click on that button. I do have a colleague working behind the scenes to help me, Brendan Hansen. And you can go ahead and put in your Q&A, and we will get to any of your questions at the very end. So feel free at any point. I do see a raised hand, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody is good. I think everybody is good. Okay. And then I just also wanted to make sure that you know that you are supported throughout life as an alum. And so you can make a personal appointment with the CDO at any point. And you can do that through the SOM alumni career site. If you haven't been there, it's som.yale.edu/alumni/career. And I really encourage you to do this. I personally love working one-on-one with folks. I feel like you get a lot of customized approach. There might be some things that we talk about today that you want to customize more for yourself in person, just to customize in terms of your own brand. And so this is a really good opportunity for you to be able to do with a coach one-on-one. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that that was there for you for life. All right. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to cover a couple of things, which is branding basics, how to build your brand, how to share your brand, and then do a wrap-up and Q&A. And just so that you know, today's session is recorded. We also have lots of other very helpful career webinars on the same site that I just mentioned, the Yale Alumni Career site. There's a number of different webinars that can be helpful to you in your career, wherever you are in your career. The last, we had one that was recent that was very focused on LinkedIn, which we will also talk about because that's very crucial to your brand as well. Highly recommend you checking that out as well. So let's think about what your brand is today. What is your brand today? Do you have a brand? Is it undifferentiated? It could be, I don't know. You don't know what it is. Could it be super distinguished? The impression is what people think about who you are, the skills that you have, the impact that you have. And your failure to say you don't have a brand, or you haven't really crafted or honed a brand, your failure to clearly articulate your brand doesn't mean that you don't have one. It just clearly means that you don't own it yet. So we're going to work today to think about, what's your brand? We need to figure out what you want to say, who you want to say it to, because in-demand brands, in-demand candidates, they don't get there by accident. It takes a lot of work, actually. And it really takes a lot of intentional thought to think about what your reoccurring set of traits that you're good at, the skills that you're good at. Any product branding, it needs to be consistent, it needs to be clear, it needs to be visible, it needs to be available, and you need to be clear about what you can provide and what problems you are able to solve for a potential employer. So the one really, really important thing to note is that branding has gone digital. And so I, probably dating myself here, but if you remember the modern day handshake pre-pandemic, and even before that, and if you ever met somebody and you had kind of this wet, fishy handshake, and you kind of left this impression like, oh, that wasn't so good, and people remembered you by that. Well, today, your digital first impression is your modern day handshake. So if you don't have a good digital first impression, say for instance, when somebody Googles your name, which people will likely do when they're looking to find you, or your resume comes across their desk and they want to know who you are, this is your very first handshake and the way that people remember you. So you want to make sure that this impression is good. And so one of the things that I mentioned earlier was LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is so crucial to promoting your brand. We'll talk about the different elements and how to really craft and hone that. But one of the resources that we have for free for SOM alumni is how to land the perfect job with LinkedIn. And it's on the same portal, SOM Alumni Careers. There's a specific link to LinkedIn, and I can show you at the very end. I can show you a screenshot of how to get there. But there's a course that is offered for free, and it'll take you through the various steps. If you kind of need help refreshing on your LinkedIn, and we will go through the different elements of what that means on your LinkedIn, because your digital first impression is so, so important to your brand. And there is an ROI. There is a payback for conscious creation. I recently worked with an MBA who didn't have such a great LinkedIn profile. We worked very meticulously on his profile. Didn't have one, and it barely existed prior. And suddenly he was reached out by somebody for a role in Ireland, and it was perfect for his background. And the recruiter had found him because he was on LinkedIn. His skills were very clear. He had ties to Ireland. His skill set was perfect. And there was no other way that he would have been connected other than the fact that we had really consciously created this profile on LinkedIn. So you have to be really conscious and thoughtful about creating this brand online. And just know that your audience is scrolling at all hours. It's not a 9-to-5 situation anymore. Recruiters are looking at night. People are busy. They've got families. They've got other commitments. People are looking at all hours. So it's always on. The other thing that you should really think about is the last point, which is your on-screen presence. That really matters. And so, for instance, when you think about connecting, of course, everything has gone remote ever since the pandemic. And so you should be prepared, if you aren't already, if you're kind of getting back into the swing of things, or you might be starting to look for jobs again, and it's been a while, and you're starting to do coffee chats or informational interviews, and somebody's like, yeah, let's connect on Google Meet, and you haven't used that yet. So just make sure you're like up to date on software, you know how to use certain things. There's all types of different software and platforms for online meetings today: Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, like I mentioned, Zoom, of course, Skype. So just make sure that your digital software is up to date, you are up to date on that, and that your kind of digital presence is nice, your background. I know these things seem pretty basic, but they actually matter. How does the background look? Is it quiet? Is your dog barking in the background? Is there stuff going on that's, when you're having these conversations, you want to appear professional, and your digital presence really matters. So just think about those things, because you can really be caught off guard when somebody's like, hey, let's just hop on the phone for a video chat tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning. So you just want to really be prepared. In terms of a brand, you always want to be a first-rate version of yourself and not a second-rate version of somebody else. And so, as you think about your brand, I know it's really easy to kind of look at other people's LinkedIn profiles or look at other people's resumes even, and kind of copy and paste some things, but you have unique traits to offer. You have your own values and your own strengths. And by the way, all coaches can kind of take you through a strengths finder session where you can go through some of your greatest strengths. We have tools that can help you kind of define some of your greatest strengths, which will then help kind of shape and shift your brand and help you kind of articulate what values you have to offer. And so, you really want to make sure that you are aligning what you're really good at. And the other thing I hear when I'm working with MBAs is like, I don't really want to brag about myself. It's like, but you're not. I think some people have a really hard time talking about themselves. And I think it's shifting your mindset around really just being very matter of fact about some of the impact and outcome that you have accomplished in your prior experience, in your work experience. And it's really about sharing your strengths. And you really deserve your own brand, and just making sure not to copy anybody else's, because only you know yourself best. So some of you may have really good relationships with these brands. I'm sure all of you recognize these brands here, whether you like them or not. They're easily recognizable, of course. Some of you may be drawn to them. Some of you might have a visceral reaction to them. You have relationships with brands, right? And brands are not for everyone. So, like I said, so you might have a bad reaction to one of these brands, right? And the reason why we put this slide up is because brands are not for everyone. And we want to make the same analogy that you are not for everybody. What makes a good brand is that it's differentiated from others, and it has a very unique value proposition, and it's not for everybody. And so you want to make sure that your brand is not for everybody. And please just don't make the mistake of being all things to all people, because I think that's probably one of the worst outcomes you could have in terms of creating a brand for yourself, is just being more generic. And you want to really create that clear, crystal focus on the skills that are differentiated, that you own, that you're really, really good at, that is differentiated from any other candidate. So it's yours, and you own your brand. You are your own brand. And as I mentioned, I worked for a branding company, and it's amazing how much time employers spend on crafting and honing their brand, and how much research and design goes into their brand. You have to be incredibly intentional about your brand positioning. And that's why I really love working on creating kind of a brand value proposition for each person as they're going through their career search, because there's something that you're looking for, right? Is it product management? Is it something where you're going towards social impact? What is it that you're looking for, and what are the skills that you own that you could deliver to that space? And you might not have any experience in that new space, but there are a lot of transferable skills that you could deliver to that new space. So just make sure that you are intentional about the unique attributes that you own, and think about kind of how you are able to own certain attributes that others cannot. So let's think about a branding brainstorm here, and think about what are some of the values. What are some of your values? And think about some of the effective ways to communicate them. Think about who you are and what is your position in the industry or function. I think this is really important to think about, because oftentimes I'm always reviewing MBA candidacy, and I'm reviewing cover letters, I'm reviewing outreach to recruiters, and it says things like, I am Stephanie Hafner, and I am really excited to learn and grow at the company. But that doesn't tell me anything about who I am as a person and what I can deliver. So we have to flip that mentality around what I want to gain out of a company and what I want to take from a new position. But I need to flip it around what value I can distinctly deliver to the company and to the employer that nobody else can own. So just make sure, as you're thinking about your values, as you're thinking about who you are, what are some of those skills that you know? So say, for instance, one of the things that I'll just give a personal example from my own career. One of the pieces of feedback that I've always gotten in my career is, one of the managers noticed, hey, Stephanie, I've always noticed that you've always been entrusted with the most difficult and challenging projects. And why is that? And so I started to think, well, what is it about my brand that attracts managers to ask me to do these projects? And it's because I take things to heart. I take things to completion. I make sure I'm very diligent about the work that I do, and I'm very thorough, and I'm very good at bringing stakeholders together. So I get it done, and I get it done no matter what. So part of that brand is what I own, right? And so think about some of the feedback that people have given you in the past, and think about how that could relate to the brand that you own. So I am constantly thinking about the feedback that other perceptions of other people and what they've told me and what I can really own, and that has become part of my brand. So think about your audience. Who's your audience? What kind of audience would you like to attract? And what are you most knowledgeable and passionate about? So think about those things when you're doing a branding brainstorm for yourself. This is really important in a brand because, as I was mentioning before, there's how you see yourself, and then how others see you. And sometimes it's interesting because you're like, oh, I didn't realize that that's how other people perceive me until those my coworkers started to tell me that they said, oh, I noticed that you're getting pulled on these really important projects. I thought, that's what I'm really good at. So you want to make sure that you're realizing how you see yourself is in alignment with how others sees you. And that's your personal brand. And if you don't know how other people see you, then you might want to do a little bit of a test on your own. So test some of those assumptions. You might, and your brand comprises a lot of things, right? So if you think about your resume, it's your academic credentials, some of your interests, definitely your work experience, some of the companies that you've worked at, your roles, your functions. It's also about how you speak, how you present, how you dress. It's multi-channel. So your brand, it comprises of a lot of things. And like I said, you want to make sure how you see yourself is in alignment with how other people see you. So test other people's assumptions and ask like maybe some close family and friends or some close coworkers and say, well, what do you think I'm really good at? What do you think that what some of my best skills are? And does that then align with what you think of yourself? And that might start to help you weave through some of those personal branding attributes that you could put on a LinkedIn, or just make sure that you're weaving through your resume. But you want to make sure that those two things are in alignment. So ask for feedback and don't be shy. Of course, ask those that trust you and know you really well. And messaging. So messaging around thinking about who's your audience, right? Like when you're doing branding, the most important thing is who are you talking to? Are you talking to C-suite level folks? Because your messaging will be very different than if you're talking to a recruiting coordinator versus a hiring manager, or who is making decisions about you? Same thing. And what do they value? So for instance, a lot of the reviews that I do when I'm working with MBAs is speaking in the language of the company. So for example, I worked with a student who really wanted to work for Google. And I know for certain that Google's initiatives, one of their top priorities right now is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I know this student from reading his resume. He had done a lot of work with diversity and equity and inclusion. And so that is one of the branding attributes I said to bring forth. So you want to make sure that you're mirroring what's important to the company, what's important to that hiring team, what's important for that role with what you can deliver to that company so that they match. And you want to mirror the language. And that would be the same thing for language. And I do the same thing. I would advise students or MBAs the same way around language. So if you're thinking about a job, and say for instance, I was working with a student who's really interested in healthcare, and she was applying to Cigna, and part of the job description was managing a diverse set of stakeholders or managing public and private partnerships. What are those skills in the job descriptions? Unpack that job description, think about the things that are valued for that company, and think about your own skills and mirror those things together. So that could come in the form of the cover letter in your messaging, or it could be peppered through your resume, or it could be also included in your LinkedIn. And then think about some of the problems that might keep them up at night. So these are all different types of messaging where you should be thinking about your audience, what they care about, the language that they use. You really want to be in their footsteps. It's the same thing as like being a marketer, as for a product, right? You want to sit in their shoes and think about what keeps them up at night, because how can you help them as a potential candidate or potential person that would work for them. Now, pictures. So words are important, but pictures are also important. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well for your LinkedIn. You're definitely playing in a multimedia world. And how do you use stories and videos and other content to grow your brand? So for instance, I'll give you a couple of examples from working with MBAs before. One MBA that I worked with had a picture of this really green, succulent cactus in the background of her LinkedIn. And I thought, why did you choose that as something that you wanted to feature in your LinkedIn profile? And she's like, well, it was so vibrant and alive. And I thought, well, that might not speak to kind of the team oriented, the spininess, of the cactus might not speak to the team oriented player that somebody's looking for. Another instance or example that I can give you is uses of videos and images on a LinkedIn profile that I was reviewing with another MBA. And he worked in China a lot, in Russia. And so he said, a lot of the companies, folks don't really know about the companies that I've worked for. So I'm going to put some videos about these companies so people will understand where I worked. And I thought, well, is it more important that you brand these companies, or is it more important that you brand yourself? And so, of course, we decided to take out the videos of the companies because we really want to focus on the branding of himself first and foremost. So really be intentional about why you're choosing the certain imagery, video, photos, content, and take a look through LinkedIn and look at images of why you linger over certain photos, why they're engaging to you. And try to mirror some of that if they are engaging to you, and think about what impressions do they leave. Really, it's all about simple, memorable stories, and you want people to remember you. So a picture really can equal 1,000 words. And when you're thinking about your LinkedIn, I'm sure many of you know this, but you really want to have a photo that has a wide smile. People love engaging photos that have a nice, bright smile because that makes them inviting and welcoming. With your LinkedIn photo, you want a white background so you can really see the beauty of your face. And you don't want anything else. Sometimes people have other people in their pictures. You really just want you and the focus to be on you. And nothing in the background. So like no buildings, really just a white, clean background and a picture of you. And that's like a perfect headshot for your LinkedIn. All right, let's do a quick exercise, which, you're kind of going to want to do this on your own. But these are the important things to think about. And I've done this exercise with a lot of MBAs before, which is if you think about your resume, and you think about it from a branding perspective. And I know it's really easy to get into the nitty-gritties of your resume because there's just so much you want to get across and so many details, so many accomplishments. But when you kind of zoom out, if somebody were to read your resume, what are 5 things that you would want them to remember about you? And I've had students that couldn't tell me that. And so if they can't tell me after reading their own resume the 5 things that they want other people to remember, how could anybody kind of walk away being like, okay, I know that person's really good at operations, really good at strategy, and really good at leadership. And it's that simple. So like, if you can't articulate that yourself, then you can't expect the reader to do that as well. So just be very intentional and mindful and thoughtful about that. As you think about your next opportunity, think about 5 things from the perspective of your personal values and your own measure of success. What is important to you? And then another exercise you could do is, if you want ask for a referral from someone in your network, what do you think are some 5 things, 5 words that they would use to describe you? So this is just an exercise to get you thinking about your brand. And you want to make sure that those things are clear and articulate. And if they're kind of all over the place, then I think it's an indication that we have a little work to do on getting our brand to be a little bit clearer and more articulate. So back to LinkedIn, and we talked about this a little bit, but it's okay. Oops, I'm sorry. It's okay if you don't have a conscious brand right now. You don't need a lot. But actually, the more simple, the better. I've seen a lot of LinkedIn, so we're going to focus right now on LinkedIn, right? I've seen people with just tons of information on LinkedIn, and actually that probably works more to your detriment than in your favor. the three most important things in LinkedIn is your background photo. And we talked about how to make sure that that's really clear. Your headshot, and your headline. So the line right under your photo, like focused in strategy and data analytics, or whatever you want your header to be. That is really important because a lot of recruiters kind of search for those terms. And then the about section, a lot of people miss this too, which I don't want you to do. Some people don't have anything, which is probably the worst thing you could do, because a lot of recruiters really search for some of the key terms to look for you. Or the opposite is you kind of put everything under the kitchen sink in your about. And so it really should be very clear. It shouldn't be very long. It should be about, I don't know, 3 paragraphs in total, but very short ones. And it tells, who are you? Like, who are you overall? No need to kind of regurgitate your entire resume, because that's really not what LinkedIn is for, but it should be kind of an elevator pitch. So if it's shabby, it's okay. You just need to simplify it. You work on it. Look at other people's. Again, don't copy, but take a look at other people's LinkedIn to kind of get some inspiration. And I highly recommend going to SOM Alumni Careers and taking advantage of the LinkedIn resource that's for free that SOM offers. It's really, really good. All right, make sure we're good on time. So we have another 15 minutes. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. We just have a few more slides to go through. So your brand, like I said, when we first started this webinar, is what people say when you are not in the room. So just think about how you can shape this. We've given you a lot of content to think about how you can shape this and mold this. But that's really what your brand is. Now, there's lots of ways to broadcast your brand. One of them is personal interactions. And this doesn't always have to be, a professional thing. It doesn't have to be, hey, let's do an informational interview. It could be literally from your sports club, or from your church, or from a mom friend. I'll tell you, one of the jobs that I've gotten was from meeting a mom, being very clear about what I've done in the past. And it was from our child's music class, and I just shared with her, and this is how I landed a job. So you never know where this connection is going to be. You just have to be very clear about your brand and very consistent everywhere. It could be formal and it could be informal. So personal interactions, your resume, of course, your LinkedIn, which we talked about quite a bit so far. And just be careful with your Instagram and Facebook. Everything is out there. And we've seen a couple of things where, you just want to be mindful of what you're putting out there, because everything is pretty visible to everybody. So just make sure that this is stuff that you would want professionals to see. Google your name. Who else has your name? Make sure that you are owning your brand and the Google search for your name. And so there are lots of ways to broadcast your name, your brand over time, over different channels, and just think about the ways in which you can build brand consistency in these multi-channels. And articulate it powerfully, enthusiastically, unapologetically, with gravitas, dignity. And it's not easy. It definitely takes practice. And you might want to practice with your friends, with your family, practice your pitch out loud, practice with a coach. I certainly have a lot of sessions where I really welcome MBAs to practice with me. I give a lot of feedback on kind of how to kind of shape and mold that brand value proposition or the pitch. Do you sound timid or awkward, or do you sound powerful and enthusiastic? You want to make sure that you're expressing it fluently and coherently, pronouncing it clearly and distinctly, and as graceful and as effortless as possible. And that definitely takes practice. So practice, practice, practice. I promise it gets easier. There's a number of ways that your brand can come across. And one of the ways is through nonverbal, of course, your eye contact. Are you looking with the person when you're, doing an informational chat or you're doing an interview? Your facial expressions. Are you excited? Are you engaged? Some of your hand gestures, you want to just seem like your entire body is really excited about the opportunity to engage. Your body posture, think about the delivery, your vocal features. Do you have a lot of ums and ahs? I've really noticed that, and that can really that can be very distracting. So just make sure that your modulation is good. You're not too monotone. You're thinking about your word usage and your content. And one of the things when you're thinking about an informational is, are you actually asking for anything? Are you making an ask? Now, of course, the cardinal rule is you never ask for a job, right? But I've heard conversations like informationals and coffee chats go really wrong. And sometimes the stories that I hear are, I said, well, how did it go? And the MBA will say, well, I talked to them and I asked a lot of questions, and we spent 20 minutes and I asked them a lot of questions and I learned a lot. And then I said, okay, and then how did the conversation end? And they said, well, that's pretty much it. And I said, well, how much did they learn about you? And so it's really important that, one, when you're talking to somebody about a potential opportunity, that you're sharing your pitch, that you're sharing your brand, that you're not just asking questions. And so you're spending time asking them questions, seeming engaged, but also telling them about yourself so that they know who you are. And then making an ask. Hey, like, knowing that I really want to get into media and entertainment. Were there any good resources that you used during your search that you could recommend that I use as well? Are there other MBA folks that you got in contact that I could get in touch with that you think would be great to have another conversation with? So make the ask, making sure that you are actually asking for something versus, just asking questions about the general job. It's really important that people know what you're looking for, otherwise they can't help you. And brands evolve. This is a long game. So, Google Chrome, you can tell it's very subtle over time, but you own and you shape that story. You can intentionally craft that story, and just be mindful of how you want to make that change and shape and shift and make that articulation very, very clear over time. And the last thing that we have before we kind of get to questions, as you think about yourself, is you have a brand, right? Like I said, whether or not you want to realize it, recognize it or not, you have one. And it's important to be yourself because everybody else is taken. So if you're not clear about your brand, then it's time for us to take steps to kind of clarify and create that brand for you. So I just want to do a recap of what we talked about. We did some branding basics. We gave you some tools, hopefully, to think about the way in which you can build your brand, the ways in which you can share your brand. And I wanted to make sure that in the last couple minutes that we had a chance to answer some of the questions. So I am going to go into the Q&A, and please feel free and go ahead and type in your questions. Let's see, will we be able to get the PowerPoint? Brendan, I believe we can, but just let me know if I'm wrong there. I think that we're able to.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, awesome. So Michael, yes, we are able to share the PowerPoint with you. Any other questions you might have? In the meantime, I don't see any questions right now, but I do want to share with you while we're doing this, while I'm waiting, if you have any questions, please pop them in. I do want to share with you this, in case you don't know how to make a career coaching appointment. If it's been a while, I don't know at what point in the pipeline you are of engaging with SOM, but you do have one-on-one coaching availability with the CDO. We have 30-minute coaching sessions for you. It's som.yale.edu alumni. You can make a coaching appointment at any time. And I also wanted to share with you what I've been talking about, which is career resources, which is really going to be helpful for your brand. And it's here under LinkedIn. So these are the two resources that I would highly recommend. This is the one that I've been referring to the whole time. And I just, I pulled them up so that you could take a look at it. This is the Sophisticated User's Guide to LinkedIn, and it gives you a number of different tips and tricks on LinkedIn if that's something that you really need to work on. How important is my headline? Talking about your photo. Can I just copy and paste my CV? The answer is no. And then most importantly, this is the master class of using LinkedIn to land the perfect job. And it actually takes you through lots of different steps to get, and I've actually gone through this, and it's very helpful, and I highly recommend going through this. And again, it's a free resource. It's offered by the LinkedIn guys. It's a step-by-step process with videos in it, and it's offered through the alumni site. So just wanted to make sure that all of you are aware of that. Now, let me go back to Q&A. I think some questions here. So what's the best way to set up a session with your office to review my brand? Great question. I think I just shared with you the career site. Just type in make a coaching appointment at som.yale.edu/alumni/career and make an appointment with a coach. And you can get one-on-one time. Paul, that hopefully answers your question. That's a great way to review your brand. Oh, sure. And I can, Jan, you said, can you add those links in the chat, please? Absolutely. Let me just grab those for you. Just give me one sec.
I just posted them, Stephanie, so we're good.
Okay, thank you so much, Brendan. I appreciate that. Okay, so Jan, thank you. Brendan posted those links for you. For your About Me part, for Jan, you had a follow-up question. For your About Me part in LinkedIn, do you have advice about how to ensure you're including keyword searches without like you're just using buzzword, without sounding like you're just using buzzwords? Yeah. Well, oftentimes it's not focusing really on buzzwords, but it's more around, like, for example, if, since tech product management is kind of the hot job of the day, I'll just give that example. I don't know what you're searching for, but my advice is always to take a look at the job descriptions that are interesting to you, and just download a bunch of those job descriptions. So say, for example, I don't know what you're searching for, but say it is tech product management, and you want to look at Google, and you want to look at Microsoft, and you want to look at Facebook, and you download all three of those different jobs. They might be different for you. Take a look at what are the qualifications and the skills that are required in those job descriptions. And those are not the buzzwords, but those are the common words that the recruiters will be keyword searching, like, cross-functional teamwork, product management work, stakeholder management, leadership, data analytics. So those are the ones that are probably very common across all those different job descriptions that you'll want to make sure that you also have in your LinkedIn. So Jen, I hope that answered your question. Certainly feel free to type in more if that doesn't. Hi, I don't see the link to LinkedIn. Let's see. Brendan, do we have that in there? Let's see.
That's the one that's the fourth bullet point on the career resources page, right?
Yes. So let me So if you go to, I can also just type it in. I'll show you again. So let me share my screen again to the person that asked this question. Let me go back for a second. So the LinkedIn. So if you go to som.yale.edu/alumni career resources, if you go all the way down to, there's Yale SOM, resume, networking, and then LinkedIn right here. And then this is the online course. So land the perfect job with LinkedIn right here. If you click on that, that will be the link. So I can also type this in as well into the chat. And hopefully that helps. Let me see if there are any other questions. I don't see any other questions, and it's about time. So I just wanted to thank you for spending the afternoon with me. And I hope that you have learned a couple of things about branding and that you continue to work on your brand and realize how important it is. So thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us, and hope everybody has a wonderful holiday, and hope to see you again soon.